Okay, we're ready. Well, hang on, let me just start.
Well done, thank you. We're good to go?
Another try for turning it off and turning it back on again. Yeah, we're ready to go.
All right, tēnā koutou katoa, welcome everybody. Apologies for getting off to a flying stop, but we had the technical gremlins come in and then the technical wizards come in and turn it on and off 3 times. Can we just ask that everyone turns their cell phones on to silent? Thank you. It's an awful lot of people to shout morning tea if you get that wrong. We will start our meeting today with karakia by King Sorali.
Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I tēnei rā, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou kia kātou katoa. Haumie, huie, tai ukie. May peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Give love, receive love, let us show respect for each other. Join, gather, unite.
Thank you, Taylor. There's no apologies today. We do note that we have Deputy Mayor Gillespie joining us by a Teams link, but otherwise everybody is here, which is great to see. Great to see so many media and, of course, the members of the public who have joined us. Thank you for coming today. Obviously, a lot of interest in some of the things we have in front of us. Just before we come to public forum, I just want to clarify a couple of things. We have, at this stage, 7 people in public forum. The standing orders say that there needs to be 1 clear day from people requesting to be, so we did cut that off at 1 clear day. Standing orders also say that when there's more than 6 people, I can, as chair, shorten each presentation to less than 5 minutes. I'm not going to do that. I don't think there's any need for rush, so each speaker will have 5 minutes. So our first speakers, with that in mind, James Dicey and Verna Murray. Welcome forward. Now, just before you chaps begin, I just need to clarify, people who are speaking together get 5 minutes, people who are speaking apart get 5 minutes each. So give you the opportunity now, if you want to speak for 5 minutes each, you need to be apart, but if you're going to do it together, it'll be 5 minutes. So up to you guys. You toss a coin? Right. Welcome, James.
They're the rules of the game, mate. Thank you for clarifying, Mr. Mann. Hello, councillors. My name is James Dicey. I'm one of a number of behind Stags Coffee Assets Grid. I will be speaking to the CLDC paper currently in front of you. I emailed all of you that last night, and I'll talk about some of the points analysis raises. Firstly, I'm very concerned that no digging into the history of the delegated authorities' creation and why they were set up this way has been undertaken. The manner in which the creation of the CLDC was negotiated is relevant to the current formation of the delegations and how these have been operated. What became the Cromwell Ward did not want to join the CLDC was forced to as part of the local government reorganisation. This is one of the concessions negotiated, which was extended to all other wards. There is also a direct line from the Administration and Finance Agreement from 1981, which was the contract between the Cromwell Borough Council and the Crown when the Crown decided Cromwell was going to be their base of operations for the dams project. The MOU signed in 1989, which then transferred to the local government Otago Region Reorganisation in July 1989, which granted the Cromwell Community Board special power relating to the disposal of dam houses. Through careful and astute dealings with land via the delegated authority by prior iterations of the Cromwell Community Board, the current wealth residing in Cromwell was accumulated. It would be morally dishonest for the council to now try and grab that which Cromwell has accumulated for itself. Secondly, the legislation has been misquoted in the document. Section 14(1) of the Local Government Act does not consider modern day context when altering delegations. This clause allowed the CLDC to effectively reject or alter the transitional committee recommendation at the time the CLDC was formulated. The council of the day adopted this largely due to Cromwell negotiating the maximum delegations due to being forced to join the CLDC, and also because they had been granted special rights under agreements with the Crown, which is a direct line to today's assets. And I will note that the people that actually moved and seconded that were a member from what became the Alexandra Ward and was seconded by a member from the Ranfurly Ward. So it wasn't only Cromwell that agreed to this. Thirdly, in relation to the comments insinuating that the community is somehow confused between district-wide and districtisation, the only confusion or conflation here is why the CLD thinks we cannot see through the thin veneer of the argument made. Looking through that district-wide lens clearly signals predetermination to undertake a districtisation process and achieves both muting the control and influence the Cromwell Community Board as well as grabbing back the power into the council. It really puts the cart before the horse. Have the discussion and consultation about what needs to be districtised in the context of the LTP process and determine whether the ward assets are required for the district or whether they should be used locally. Don't strip any power or influence of the ward prior to the conversation, then act confused while the Cromwell Community Board and constituents get upset. Trust us, where the government is not a position statement that generates any confidence without better trust being built, particularly in the context of the stealthy way that this has been undertaken. There are so many instances of Cromwell's money being uplifted and sent down the river in the recent past, and you'll see the reason for scepticism. Legal advice recently shared with me by the CEO regarding the proposed treatment of endowment land by the council in 2020, where there was apparently an attempt to sell endowment land under current valuation, and the council's own lawyers counselled them away from something which would be a bad look, provides further fuel to the scepticism fire. Fourthly, nothing in the local government legislation precludes delegations in the manner that they have been granted. The legal advice by the council in this matter was so couched in cautions and generalities, I am amazed that the CEO had the temerity to suggest that granted delegations as currently constructed in the CLDC is against legislative intent. Even rudimentary analysis of the legislation is clear. It is entirely permitted to grant delegations in the manner currently structured, and it has been operating in this way effectively for 35 years. Fifth, as noted by the CCB in their statement, it is clear that the council is required to effectively consult with community boards prior to reducing their role. The means by which they presented the equivalent to the council of the current paper and dressed it up as writing a legal for the community boards, which would save time and administration, patently falls short of effective consultation. Six, further analysis in the document is so poor that it beggars belief. Not provide any weight to financial considerations as a consequence of this proposal makes it clear that this is an abuse of process. The ramifications for the assets for each of the wards, not just Cromwell, are significant and material. The attempt to decouple the removal of delegations from the power it effectively sends to the council is an abusive process. Looking at this through a substance versus form argument indicates that the form may be followed, but the substance of both the removal now and for what end makes it clear that this is both a power and asset grab. Let's call it for what it really is. Lastly, the analysis, or more accurately lack thereof, on significance
5
indicates.
minutes, James. I'll just let you wind up. Thanks.
Okay, I've only got a short amount to go, Mr.
Cool.
Mayor. Thank you. Lastly, the analysis on significance indicates the council has failed to properly analyse significance in accordance with its own policies. There is strong community interest. When was the last time you had this number of people in a room? It will have an effect on the ownership of a strategic asset, Gear Avenue in Cromwell at least. Who knows what else, because the analysis is lacking, and people are significantly affected and interested in the matter. The CCB paper confirms this. I implore all councillors around the table to do the following. Firstly, do not accept the document as presented. It has so much missing and is so incomplete to make a mockery of proper process analysis. Secondly, reject the significant statement in the document. This is a highly significant process, and the council has not followed its own processes. Third, if you fail to do this, then select the option to reject the changes in delegation. Lastly, if you fail to do that, at least kick it down the road to have a proper discussion on district-wide lens and districtisation in the context of the LTP. The council has a lot on its plate, and I understand the LT process is going to present some challenges given economic headwinds, rampant regional growth, and additional legislative requirements.
We'll finish it there. Thank James.
Yep.
That's much
Two more sentences, Tim.
No.
We really want a judicial review, and its cost both financial and time impacting the LT process. In the light of what has been proposed, I would suggest that all community board members, but particularly the members of the CCB, need to review whether they wish to continue in their roles, given the likely severe curtailment of their activities.
Right. Speaking of curtailment, I'll curtail you there. Thank you. Questions for James? No questions. Thanks, James. We'll move on to Vernon Murray. Welcome, Vernon.
Sorry, there's a little bit of double up, James, and I didn't sort of just going through my speech then, there are some commonalities, but my,
I'll just pause. There is a rule in the standing orders about repetition. I'm not troubled by that today. I want to hear fully from everybody, so just go ahead. No, don't.
just so I wasn't going to read you.
We'll call it emphasis.
Look, and my interest in this has really come from the history of it all. That's where my interest is. So the Clyde Dam came about as a result of the Native Parliament, which precluded development, the Crown Act 1992. The various deals the Commonwealth did with the Crown, a pot of money was secured to purchase assets such as gear estate and undertaking infrastructure work. Cromwell did not want to be part of the new COEC, and this was due to what the Cromwell Council at the time felt was in the interest of the community. And I've got an attachment one to the email that I sent to you this morning, so that's there. I've heard Comcom here at Central Otago Community Board has an unusually high level of delegation. The door to this was opened by the local government, Otago Region Reorganisation Order of 1989, where Clause 69 gave Cromwell special delegations, which when compared to other community boards in the order, it's quite different. The order stipulated that special consultative processes that CODC had to go through with the CCP. Now, I acknowledge that this was part of the memorandum of understanding, but it does sort of go to the nexus of the delegations, and that's part one and part two of the delegations register, clause 9 of the community board's delegations register, and it's attachment 2 and attachment 4 in the email I sent you. The Crown land sale for these lands were part of the genesis of Cromwell as well. This then went to a transitional committee, so after the order came out, they recognised this and they resolved the principle of maximum delegation of authority to community boards be adopted, and also the cost line of the decision-making agency in this case would be community boards, and that's attachment 3. And CODC accepted this at the time. The more that this issue is examined, the more it becomes apparent that there are valid reasons for the creation of the delegated authority and appropriate protections of the philosophy, which is why it has persisted and should continue to persist until at least an informed conversation can happen. I would just note that should the other communities wish to see their delegations changed, there's nothing to say that cease to be issued by the same fate, given that in the organisation order there was a special carve-out for CCP. Looking at this through a certain lens, it could be argued that bringing the delegations in line with the rest of New Zealand might indicate that there is little or no significance. However, once the origin story of philosophy and protections are understood, and that's the protections through the delegations, it can be argued that delegations as they are today go back to the founding of the COEC, and changing these is absolutely and without doubt significant. Should the councillors decide to remove the delegated authority today as it stands, without community engagement or effective community engagement, I think that principles of natural justice would be agreed. I was getting past some. So there's two decisions in this process that I see folding up that are about to be made. So today's decision is a decision on the delegations. That's the current decision. And then there's a future decision, which may be about distributisation. It might be in the long-term event. Who knows? And I would hope that it will be open to a public process and how these are. So that's the future decision. But it's important to understand which decision is being made when the process is being made and the implications of this decision. I believe that the motivation for the current decision is that some people think that community boards currently control too much, and the decisions need to be made at the council level and looked at that through a district-wide lens. I would caution anyone with this thinking, think carefully about predetermination. The reason for this is with the delegations in place, and that's the current decision, it is problematic to make the future decision. So if you are invested in the idea of the future decision, in effect, the current decision becomes a fait accompli, meaning that your mind is totally closed to any possible outcomes for that current decision. This is cart before the horse. And an open-minded public process where district is being discussed and delegations will follow. If I have this wrong, then the future ultimately decision can happen with the delegations as they are, in which case the decision today is clear. Leave the delegations as they are and have the ultimate discussion later. I also note that there has been a 1-year extension to the LTP process that's been sort of made available to all councils. Lots of councils are taking that up, and I understand CAC is considering that. I think I'm on 5 minutes.
Well done. Thank you, Werner. Questions, councillors? Excellent. Thank you for your time. Shirley Calvert, welcome back to the table, Shirley.
I'm just going to speak very quickly.
Well, no, you just have to speak within 5 minutes. It depends on how much you got to say.
So much here. Okay, Worship councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I have 3 points I'd like to make. One, no one in all these discussions to date have said no to the resolution that will be debated today. And I don't think there's any concern about responsibilities and delegations being reviewed. They should be. What is concerning is the lack of information, the speed with which this was brought to the boards, and the total lack of any consultation with anyone. It's the responsibility of each councillor to ensure they have sufficient information of appropriate quality to be able to both debate and decide a course of action. The report before you should not be accepted, as at the level of significance has not been properly established. For example, there are obviously significant community interests in this matter, as is evident by the number of people here today, and the statement given by the Cromwell Community Board. There has been no acknowledgement or analysis of these when considering the significance. As a consequence, the council has not complied with its own significance policy. The only choice left to you is to reject the resolution. There doesn't seem to be a plan about how this proposal will pan out, what the consequences might be, or when it will come into effect. A one-pager of what community boards could do under the new delegations is a mystery, and the proposed new functions of the community boards are all pretty much covered by the various community trusts and community groups. Having the unique delegated powers of authority have been a huge advantage for all the wards of the district. Without them, we would not have been able to lead the way to unlocking things like the housing development typologies we're currently undertaking. We wouldn't have had our master plans or spatial plans completed, community-led development with using community board powers of delegation have brought us things like NASB Vision, Night Sky, accreditation, and joint venture housing developments. These would not have come about had we been operating under the proposed changes to the delegations, and those have been pretty big. Cromwell has said they can't make a good decision because they don't have enough information, nor have they had the time to take it to their community. Neither have any of the boards. As decision makers, you will only be as good as the information you have before you to debate. I and many others here today are asking for a pause. Time for all the information to be gathered and distributed amongst all the communities. Then have the debate. You have the grounds to decline the report. That's the only decision you need to make today. And this is number two, this isn't just about Cromwell. Scenario one, Cheviot have a brand new pool. They fundraised and worked hard to bring it all together. 10 years on, despite the great work and effort, the pool is no longer viable. It must be sold. Along comes a wealthy businessman who has just built a new holiday home right next door to the pool. He offers to buy the pool and a bit of land aside for a tennis court. Cheviot now have the money, but only can't even new bridge, so the pool money is directed there. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking this is just a making story. It happened, but just a notary and without the tennis court. I made that bit up. Scenario two. Maniatoto can no longer sustain a hospital. All the fundraising and loans keep it going have failed. But Bupa reckon they can turn it into a rest home care facility and offer to buy it. The board agrees, but before they can use the proceeds, the one who's a $2 million loan from Cromwell needs to be repaid. And then Clyde desperately needs a new roundabout and 2 new one-way streets. Point number three. I used to wonder, like many others, A, why Cromwell seem to have more than other community boards, and B, why our community boards have delegated responsibilities beyond that most other community boards in New Zealand. And the answer is quite simple. A, Cromwell bought what they had. They took out a large loan, negotiated with the Crown to build their town that was about to be flooded. Yes, they got a lot of stuff, but they paid for it. The loan was repaid and as extra tax on top of their rates. And this was well before the amalgamation into CODC. And B, the delegated responsibilities were a bargaining chip at the time of amalgamation. Cromwell was reluctant, that's probably saying the least, to join CODC if they didn't want to, and they didn't want, to lose control of their hard paid for new assets. By being given the delegated authorities, the boards were able to have their say in where and what for their assets would be used. The three other boards hung on to the coattails of Cromwell and enjoyed the same delegated responsibilities and privileges just by being part of CODC. Thank you. 4 minutes 52, I think.
I made it 4 minutes 50, so.
Very well done. Questions for Shirley?
Should be questions, should be lots of questions.
Doesn't appear to be. Thank you, Shirley. Lovely to see you again. Robin Dyson.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to have a chat here today. Because I only have a short little talk, I'd like to start with a tiny bit of somewhat ancient history. 1877, Vincent Pike, Vince Cromwell, by voting with Cromwell, joined the Vincent County rather than go to the lakes, which was Cromwell's preference. Right? He promised them if they would come along with Vincent County, the headquarters would be in Cromwell. When the vote came for where the headquarters would be, Vincent Pike voted for Alexandra. An effigy of Vincent Pike was burnt in Cromwell and thrown off the Cromwell Bridge. That's just a little bit of ancient history. The aspect that I would like to have explained here today is that of undue haste. Council matters are generally exhaustively considered, views and inputs from the public asked for, and decisions not taken lightly or in a hurry. Sometimes this can be totally frustrating. For example, there was, indeed still is, the everlasting process of the Cromwell Memorial Hall. Something like 15 years went by discussing this until a completely new approach was taken up, and all those discussions were discarded, and a new hall was decided upon. All those here today are only too well aware what has transpired since then. Absolutely nothing. Talk, discussion, consultation with locals, and this is the vital point, but eventually totally nothing to show. Frustrating, yes, but no one was going to accuse the council of not going about their business in a shoddy, ill-considered, slipshod manner. The CCB and the CODC could not be accused of rushing matters. Now we come to the point. Suddenly we have thrust before us with extraordinary haste, a huge departure from the status quo, almost zero discussion. The public have had no chance to have any input until today. There has been no information accompanying the resolution, vital information that would form the basis for good debate and essential for making informed decisions. One is inevitably led to conclusions that something mighty serious has happened, and the proposed stripping of delegations is so urgent that stealth and underhand actions are needed to save the day. The question is, saved from what? Has there been a bit of a boo-boo? Why the need for sudden change? Why the hurry? What has gone wrong? What are people not being told? Cromwell folk feel that this action by the council is ripping them off. That is a very strong perception, and if it is wrong, the urgency needs to be explained. What would the council, those sitting around this table, why would the council, those sitting around this table, risk pissing off the largest conurbation in the district? I would ask the council, or more particularly the mayor and the new CEO, to come clean, explain what you're doing and why, and show everyone the consequences of what might happen if we do not go down this path. I mentioned perceptions a while ago. Right now, the strongly held perceptions are that you are hiding something. It looks underhand and dishonest. Please come clean, take a step back, explain what you're doing. Why is it necessary? Why is it necessary, and what has led to this unfortunate situation? The words have always interested me. I'm a bit of a logophile. It is worth noting that the word stealth contains within it another word. I'll leave that to you to figure out what that is. Any questions?
Questions, councillors?
Hey?
No. Thank you, Robin. Good to see you again. Trevor Tinworth. Got Trevor. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm Trevor Tinworth, Chairman for the residents for responsible development for Cromwell, who represent 400 odd ratepayers. We support the Cromwell Community Board's public statement, and we oppose the proposed changes to delegations and suggest a pause, consult with the community. As there's a high level of public interest in this issue. If this process goes beyond today, it should be that all council discussions, legal advice, etc. should be done in a public forum for visibility, and not to defer to those all council processes, and that it's suitably consultated with the community. That's all I have to say.
Wow. Thank you. Questions? Very clear statement. Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate it. Bob Scott. Welcome, Bob, Community Board member.
Good morning. I, along with a number of other members of the Community Board, have a number of concerns. Number one is the lack of consultation. The first indication that this was due to become an issue was when the Cromwell Community Board agenda was issued for their meeting on the 23rd of January. The Cromwell Community Board has reviewed the register of delegations and notes that in paragraph 16 it states, if the council wishes to reduce the role of the Community Board, it must effectively consult with that board first. There has been no prior consultation. Timeframe for submissions. By insisting that the Cromwell Community Board produce a submission by the 11th of February, a Sunday, the board was given only 13 working days to deliver a submission. This is an enormously complex issue, one which is likely to have a long-lasting effect on the way our community is represented. And for such a complex issue, this timeframe was far too short. Lack of supporting information. In order to make a submission or a decision, the Community Board would have expected to see a register of land assets, including endowment land and reserve land, within each ward. The Community Board also needs clarification of the other buckets of assets, for example, the Cromwell Development Account, across each ward in the district. In addition, the paper at agenda item 2413 consisted of a mere two-page report prepared by the CEO, which, unlike any other report to the board, had not been reviewed or authorised by another person, staff member or number 4, community concerns. As well as the considerable traffic on social media platforms, articles in news media outlets and traditional news, for example, the ODT, I've had a huge amount of direct contact from community members. Ironically, most of those contacts got their information from the Otago Daily Times, a publication that Mayor Tim described as more reasonable than other media sources. Despite the apparent reasonableness of reporting, without exception, the Cromwell community sees this as a money grab and a bid by the other wards in the district to plunder the carefully acquired and prudently managed assets, until now controlled by the Cromwell Community Board. The community also sees this as a serious threat to the completion of the Event Centre Memorial Hall project. After so much work has gone into it, and dare I say, so much money has been spent already on consultancy fees and staff time, to cancel now would be seen as an epic failure by the council, and one which the community would never forgive. Predetermination. There is considerable evidence of predetermination which should preclude certain councillors from taking part in the debate today and voting on the motion. For example, there was a quote from Councillor Martin McPherson in the news on the 20th of January which said, "Start thinking along the lines that we are going to be better off across the district." Mayor Tim's Facebook Live post on Monday the 29th of January made it very clear that it was all about the money, as he described the need to cover district debt and the need to fix infrastructure throughout the district in what he described as this challenging environment. Which brings me on to why now? There have been plenty of occasions in the past where economic conditions have been challenging. The Cromwell Community Board has enjoyed this level of delegation for the past 35 years, which surely sets a precedent for it to continue. And the register of delegations was debated at council as recently as October 23, when they decided to make no changes. And finally, have the other community boards made a wise and reasoned decision? Do they realise that by voting to accept this change, they have effectively consigned themselves to approving street names and looking after cemeteries? It's not what I signed up for. I stood for election because I wanted to make a difference and to serve my community. I don't want to spend my time approving street names. We have some very talented and dedicated people on our community boards. Make use of their talents and give them the opportunity to make a difference and make a contribution by giving them meaningful work to do. Thank you.
3 seconds short of 5 minutes, Bob. Next, you take the chocolate fish safe after. Well done. Oh, hang on. Are there any questions? Stu?
We built a hospital. Not the main streets.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's a statement rather than the question.
It's true. Money to make it happen.
All right,
You need
enough.
more money to make it happen.
Enough. You've had your say, James.
Yes.
Thank you. Wally Sanford, another community board member from Cromwell. Welcome, Wally.
Thanks for having me. I set my time down. I'm here today in my capacity as a Cromwell Community Board member to raise a couple of points for your consideration on a couple of matters that of importance to the Cromwell Board. Firstly, on the proposed changes to delegations. There's far too much to say on this matter. The reports prepared to the community boards and to council today, in my view, expose council to undue risk in relation to following due process and do not respect the seriousness of the implications that can come from accepting the proposed changes to delegations. The report before you today is naive in its assessment of significance and financial implications, and hence the need to effectively consult on the matter. Surely you'll reach the same conclusion. That said, I understand certain community boards are very accepting of the proposed changes, and hence I propose the following solution to you. I understand Cromwell worked hard to establish the level of delegations that have been afforded to community boards, and I question the appropriateness of council having a blanket policy to the delegations over 4 different community boards. All the text existing and proposed already exists to achieve this. This is particularly relevant given the fact that many councils don't even have community boards to represent all wards, and would serve as a good test case if in fact one of the drivers for the proposed delegations was to cut down on administrative burden on council staff at keeping 4 boards running. This would also respect the fact that the drivers that led to the negotiated delegations in 1989 have not materially changed in 35 years, along with the Treaty of Waitangi and Anzac Day. While I understand Peter Kelly has rolled out variable delegations over the community boards, he has also reiterated several times that he is a mere spectator while council navigate this decision. That's if you choose to navigate the decision and not just throw it out for what it is and how the proposal is being presented. There is definitely an opportunity to review how community boards go about what business, and the proposed changes to delegations has started a worthy discussion and has prompted some solid reflection for me on my role on the community board. But the starting point should not be diminishing community boards to data entry operatives to council service requests. Let's have that discussion, but it can't happen in the current context. Council has title to 384 parcels of land, or 384 titles to land. This includes seemingly random rural blocks, parks and reserves, utilities reserves, and some development land and so on. I've got my head around some of how this total land holding is proportioned, but does anyone actually have a definitive assessment of CODC land holdings and their current and future potential that notes restrictions such as Ngāi Tahu commitments and the status of endowment land? Secondly, I'd just like to highlight a pretty simple economics concept that should be front of mind when deciding on whether to proceed with council projects such as the Memorial Hall. Cost of construction rises every day, as does the value of our land assets. You have an opportunity to lock down the cost of construction on a project today while the value of our assets continue to grow, tipping that equation in our favour. Cromwell needs this Memorial Hall. It's not a want. If shit hits the fan, we need somewhere to meet, we need somewhere to celebrate, and we need something positive to bring our community together. We haven't had a suitable memorial hall for a long time, and it would rip the heart out of our community to miss this chance at proceeding with the hall. And lastly, it's great that Alex and Cromwell transfer stations now accepting waste order.
Thanks, Wally. Questions from
We've got
council?
time for questions.
Tamer has a question.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts, Wally, on why delegations and distritisation, and particularly as it relates to the wealth from the sale of land, can't be separated.
So it comes down to what this is all about. If this is about taking easy money from Cromwell, because we have Plan Change 18 land, which is an industrial development right on our doorstep, it can be realised in the next few years. If it's about taking that money, I'm concerned about the time frame, about how quickly that money can come about, because there's a quick way to develop land, like sell off super lots for 10% of their value, or you can wait a few years and it'll be worth 10 times more, for example. But I don't know if we can really have that discussion until we find out what this is really about and whether that land is endowment land, for example. And if there's an obligation for that money to actually stay in Cromwell. We don't know this, so we can't actually have that discussion at the moment.
So those concerns relate specifically to the distritisation and the value of that money and where the value of the money is assigned, or the sale of the lands, as opposed to the delegations.
There's so many angles here that we need to debate and we don't have answers on. The community boards have been sold a different pitch at all corners, except for the one consistent thing was basically entering service requests that there's brewing ground on the side of the road, then council can sort that out if the chair brought it to the council meeting, for example. That's such a small part of what a massive discussion needs to happen. So yeah, I won't be going too far into the delegations or distritisation today, because that's just too small concept of a much bigger picture.
To follow up then on Tamer's question, Wally, would it give you comfort if it was said today that there will be a discussion on distritisation later this year, it will be consulted on, and within that, as part of a very broad discussion, will be plainly put where land is across the district, what its status is, endowment, council owned, reserve, which we can't do anything with other than get back to the Crown and so forth. That gives you comfort in terms of today's discussion, that the things you're concerned about will be dealt with and consulted on later in the year. I mean, I'm presuming that. I'm only one vote around the table, but I do lead the LTP and so forth.
By the end of today, the heart can be ripped out of the community board. So that's the big thing that could happen today. I don't think you've actually given enough respect to the gravity of what that proposal is.
Okay.
As you've said in the past, it's basically just entering service requests and naming streets. That's all that will be left for community boards. I mean, at the moment, we champion our communities, we advocate for our communities, that will continue. But the actual guts of what we do for a job is going to get taken away.
But to follow on from that, you've been at the board, I think, when I've made it very plain that it's my intention as mayor to bring in, if this does go through today, right, that the boards would have a report every month to the council, which would involve 4 times a year the chairs actually sitting at this table and bringing up whatever they wish. If it's not their turn and there's something of urgency in their community, then we will hear from 2 chair boards that day. And further, any discussion that is related to a ward, which isn't currently within the ward's lane, and I'll take us back to the Cromwell Airport hangars situation, which some around the room will remember, would automatically come, unless there's a time factor, why not, before the community board for their views. And beyond that, the community board can bring anything they want to the table through those representations. It's actually expanding the advisory role of the community board, is it not?
My response to that is, if every community board meeting is not taken as read at every council meeting at the moment, then there's already something wrong.
We might agree on that.
Yeah. I mean, you sit in on community board meetings. basically, that is a report to council every time council staff and yourself and the CEO come to a community board meeting. So we don't need to knock that back to every quarter. It happens every 6 weeks at the moment.
Be in addition to that.
Stuart,
Just, I got the, what if that money, you talk about a land grab, asset grab? What if that was invested, and clearly the group from Cromwell invested better in Cromwell or enhanced? Why is it a trend that it's going to be taken away? What is that momentum? Because the best thing we could have in this region is a fantastic Cromwell.
As I said, asset grab is it?
It's perception it's an asset grab, but the best thing, and I know in our little rural community, we want to thrive in Cromwell. This
Yeah.
table has looked over 12 sets of eyes. If we come together with some fantastic ideas, it should be enhancing the development of a region like Cromwell, what you've got coming down the line.
We're moving
Actually
into the same.
Yeah, well, just, I
We've
just,
got no idea what council stand to gain or community board stands to lose from all this when it comes to assets. That's the whole issue that's been reiterated quite a few times. That we don't know what we stand to lose, and it follows that you don't know what you stand to gain as a council.
Nothing further, councillors? Thanks, Wally. Good to see you. Appreciate you taking the time. And our last public forum speaker today, Odell Mortius. Welcome, Odell.
Thank you. Gordon Stewart was going to say myself.
No,
Speak for me.
no, Odell, it's either yourself or it's not. Not playing games.
But. Well, thank you for this opportunity. Following on my comments on the proposed downgrading of the activities of community boards by the CODC. 1, the current system represents democracy in action with local representatives making local decisions. This has worked well for 35 years. There was a suggestion that this has been illegal, which is not true in my opinion, and casts dispersions on previous councils and CEOs. 2, no clear reasons have been given to the public for the need to change, nor has there been a statement on what is involved. Is it money? Is it land? And if land, does it include endowment land? 3, why was this very major proposal not included in the annual plan or in the 10-year plan? 4, and why the great rush to put it through now? Cromwell does have assets held in the council's name that other wards might envy. But when Cromwell stretched itself in the 1990s and made land purchases, the other wards declined the opportunity to form a partnership. Cromwell pays its way. Some 5 years back, the water and wastewater rates were amalgamated. In the first year, in which some 9 million was spent upgrading Cromwell's waste treatment, this ward had a win. But with the Clyde waste system and the Alexandra water upgrades which followed, Cromwell ratepayers are now subsidising others. As you are aware, a portion of your rates are based on land values. Compare the following figures which clearly show which wins and who loses. Bannockburn 790 metres square, rates 428. Yeah.
That's helpful. We've all received that.
Okay.
We've all had that in front of us.
Super. Would Cromwell now be better off in the QLDC? It only takes a modest number, say 20, of ratepayers to request an investigation into a boundary change. Also, the Maniatoto and Roxburgh councillors should be aware that if community boards are demoted as proposed, there may well be a call again for councillors to be allocated district-wide, as there was around 2010. At that time, an independent committee of talented residents recommended just that. It was only the mayor's casting vote that retained the status quo. If this did occur, it would be most unlikely that someone from areas with a small population base would be elected, when a well-performed and high-profile councillor from Roxburgh, John Lane, stood for re-election in the Alexandra ward. He was soundly defeated. That's it.
That's all right. Thank you. Questions of Odell?
We've just got a lot of none.
Thank you very much, Adele. Appreciate that. As we've been in a difficult situation. Righty ho, that does draw to the conclusion the public forum. Thanks to everybody who took part. Brings us now to the confirmation of the minutes of our meeting of the 31st of January. If there were ordered to somebody who was there one container, thank you very much. A seconder, Tracy. Any discussion, councillors? All those in favour? Aye. Against, carried. A reminder that members of council need to be vigilant and stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between their role as a member and any private or other external interests they might have, and to check your council declarations of interest on a regular basis. That now brings us to the first report for the day, and that is the options for the delivery of the 24 or 34 long-term plan. That, of course, is an annexure, which I'm sure you all have in front of you. Welcome, Christina and Saskia.
Today I'm bringing a report to consider the options provided by the government for the delivery of the 2024 to 34 long-term plan. As you'll see throughout the report, there's a number of key factors when deciding on which option to take. Those options were status quo and adopted by the 30th of June 2024, delay for up to 3 months and adopted by the 30th of September 2024. Either of those options were followed out a consultation document, and also the last one that came a bit late is the option to consider delaying the adoption of the LTP for a year and go within the annual plan for this year. Okay. So you'll see through the paper and there is a number of key issues to consider. They're quite extensive. And in particular, I just want to make one amendment under the page 7 under the local body elections. You've got the next local body elections will be held in October 2025. Just underneath that, it needs to read under 2024 to 25 annual plan option. And then the rest of the paragraph, there's apologies for that error. I'll just open it up for any further questions.
Councillors, questions? I'll run the risk of making a statement, but I think it doesn't.
Neil.
Yeah, I'll come to it. The government needs a bit of a pat on the back for this one. It came unexpectedly, but it's useful. So we'll go Neil and then Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question is saying that my mouse won't shift to the other screen. I perceive from the report there is no downside to what's been recommended. That council staff are saying warning bells, warning bells, warning bells, despite the olive branch that's been offered or the opportunity that's been offered. I'm not picking up anywhere any alarm bells saying this would not be a good thing. Have I interpreted the report enough to be able to make that observation?
Yes, when you look at all the key issues it touches on, and it's quite extensive when you started delving into this, certainly this late option is our absolute preferred option to go ahead with. It gives time for all those other conversations that need to happen so that we can really have a really good, strong LTP. And just to clarify, because this can be a bit confusing, it would be an annual plan for year 1, and then the long-term plan would be years 2 to 10. Yeah.
So a 9-year LTP.
Yeah.
So it's not year 4 of the current LTP. It's almost a mini LTP that sits on its own, called annual plan year 1.
Clarify that it is year 4 of the LTP. So the LTP continues in operation. So it's your typical annual plan, but just it's going to be based on that year 4.
So it'll be a year 4 of the current LTP, but with necessary budgetary adjustments.
Correct.
Thank you. Yep. Martin.
Neil's basically taken words out of my mouth. I concur, with his thinking. We've heard from staff about the immense pressure, especially from finance team, been under, and this is an olive branch being sent to us from Wellington, and I think we should jump the opportunity. And I'm fully in support of the recommendation.
Just want to confirm, or for you guys to answer me, that the audit side of things is not going to be disrupted and that there is going to be capacity for the audit going forward in relation to this.
Yes, I've talked to our audit manager and it's actually beneficial for us, so there'll be no audit of the annual plan, so we don't come back to an audit if that's what you decide today. And given that some councils have already gone through the audit process and are going through the audit process, there are a number of councils around New Zealand that will continue with the LTP. So our audit manager said it's actually beneficial for Audit New Zealand because if they, with advance notice, can get us scheduled in next year on what would be a quieter year for local government for the typically.
Is there any risk for us that we don't have an audit of the consultation document and then they come back later and say you got it wrong? Or it's just clear sailing, the government's getting the path ahead of us?
Clear sailing. And look, we'll, if you decide this today, we will come to you on the 20th of March and have quite a detailed conversation around the annual plan and what's in and out and going through that work in the background at the moment. So I think the risk would be low in terms of, it'd be only if we were proposing new projects and would clearly need to put that in consultation document. So we'll make sure we cast a real close eye over that.
So maybe in years to come, we might look back on this as the beginning of the government recognising that annual audits are probably a colossal waste of time and money for some councils. Oh, that was a statement.
What do you mean, some?
All right, any further questions, councillors? I see before us A, B, C, D and E. Does anybody want to move those?
I'm happy to, Your Worship.
Thank you, Martin. Seconder? Thank you, Cheryl. Is there any further discussion required, councillors?
I'd just like to highlight that although there is a lot of pressure goes on the finance team in an LTP, that it's an exceptional amount of work. I think it's compounded in this instance by taking out 30% of our business and then being told to put it back in. It's not that we're not keeping up or not doing what we should be doing. It's that in a very short time, we have had to take it out
And to take that one step further, we're putting it back in with still a lack of clarity about what it actually means.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest one from this until we know what
This gives it time.
the latest iteration.
Yeah.
Local water done well. I can remember there's so many names for these things now. It'll be better. Right, we've got a seconder and a firster. And a mover. All of those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, we move back to our main agenda now and next item, as soon as I can make my computer work. Which of course is the update to the delegation, registered delegations. Peter and Wayne will be taking that paper, but I think first we'll hear from Anna and Mark before you do the paper, or which way around? Yeah, I think Anna Harrison, Chair of the Cromwell Community Board, would welcome you forward. Pleasure to have you here, Anna. I know how busy you are, so it's wonderful.
It was a very slow trip through Gorge this morning too, I have to say, so I was worried that I wasn't going to quite make it in time.
As it turned out, yes.
Trucks and trailers and other things going on. I'm going to stand, being quite a small, short person, I will disappear under the table if I sit, and I want to be really clear and really definite in what I'm going to say. That backs up some of what you've probably just heard already from the public forum, but also to clarify where we're coming from and also what I'm hearing in the community, which I'm finding a little bit worrying and upsetting. So kia ora koutou to His Worship the Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this meeting to outline the position of the Cromwell Community Board in the matter of changes to delegations for the 4 community boards in the Central Otago District. And I think that's very important to remember that actually I'm not just talking about Cromwell, I'm here thinking about this in a more global way, that this is about 4 community boards, not just about ours. I'm in a very privileged position to represent my board and my community at this meeting, and I'm hoping for a fair hearing and a reasoned debate to happen by our elected council members. I have been shocked and disheartened to hear about some inflammatory behaviour by members of this council towards Cromwell Ward councillors since our position on delegations has been made public. The behaviour has been described to me as angry, dismissive and bullying, and this makes me very concerned about predetermination and about how Cromwell Ward councillors and CCB will be treated by CODC elected members moving forward. There are nasty, threatening tactics being used to belittle the way that the CCB came to our position statement and to persuade elected members to fall in line rather than to make their own decisions. I'm hopeful that His Worship the Mayor calls his council into line and calls out this behaviour as this decision is debated today. The CCB is very clear in the position it holds about the motion to change delegations, and our concerns have already been outlined to the governance manager and should be taken into account as the matter is debated today. The rhetoric that the board has blindly taken instruction from a vocal group in our community is insulting. We've highlighted concerns brought to us by our community, but we have also, in the very limited opportunity that we've had, tried to bring genuine concerns about the process of this decision making and the impacts on all wards in our district. We are concerned about the following: the lack of consultation, the timeframe given for submission, the lack of supporting information, the concerns that our community have brought us, and also the wider conversation about districtisation, which I'm well aware people around this table would like to have that completely removed from the conversation about delegations. I believe that they are interlinked. The current register of delegations in paragraph 16 prescribes that if the council wishes to reduce the role of the community board, it must effectively consult with the board first. There has been no consultation. The CCB is concerned about the lack of information for all boards and CODC elected members as provided in the reports presented to our meetings. More time is needed to make an informed decision around this table and for concerns to be recognised and heard by the governance manager, chief executive and councillors. A report for decision by this council should not have been tabled until consultation with all 4 boards had taken place. A brief paper and option to make a submission in a very short time frame does not constitute consultation, effective or otherwise. Today's paper asserts that no consultation is required as this is a direct decision of council. This is in contradiction to what is stated in the schedule of delegations and a bit of a slap in the face to our boards. You're making it very clear that you would like to significantly diminish the role of community boards by not effectively consulting with them. Instead of consultation, we're working on high emotion, hearsay, unsubstantiated facts, and a weak tagline that tells us, there, don't worry, if we pull all your teeth, you will still be able to suck eggs. Except it's worded under a false notion that this will somehow make us more connected to issues in our community and provide us with a quarterly opportunity to let the council know of all the lovely things we've been doing in Cromwell. We have no idea what the reality will be, as there is not enough information and there has been no attempt to provide it or to provide for effective consultation. The paper presented today is an attempt to simplify and dismiss our concerns. This is just about delegation, not about anything else. And to again belittle the CCB that we are confused. Apparently when we make links to districtisation and wish to open up a conversation across our district. We were told when the paper was presented at our January meeting that this was going to be a conversation. So what is the hurry and why won't you engage in the conversation to help us understand it's simple, it's just delegations, nothing to see here message that we are consistently getting. All community boards in our district and our councillors need to understand the impact on rates across the district with changes to delegations that will lead to assets that sit within each ward being managed more directly by council. Cromwell is not the only ward that will have significant impacts from this change. It is incredibly naive to think that the change will be completely rosy for all the other wards. We need to understand what will materially change. Current delegations already state that no board can acquire, hold or dispose of land. No board can hold funds, it can't have a bank account. And the board makes the recommendations to council and council makes the decision. If that's where this is falling down, maybe that's where this needs to be addressed. Council has always had the ability to use funds from land sales within any ward for its own purposes. We also need to understand the impact on projects that already sit within the LTP and have funding allocated to the Cromwell ward. The hall, that's a biggie. And you're making a decision about that today. The town centre redevelopment. What changes here? Do we lose long-awaited Cromwell infrastructure developments? Will we be punished through the decision making about these projects because we won't fall in line? We have asked for additional information and again we've had a response that says this is not important or relevant. Surely the most important information for us to understand is about land and asset holdings within each ward, including area, current usage, any current statutory restrictions, hazard zoning, development, etc., etc. We need to know those things to really fully understand if we're not able, as we have been, to have control over what happens to those assets. We don't understand what that does. We don't understand it. And unless there's a conversation had with us, how can we? This is the part that has our community shouting asset grab. This is the part that's being dismissed as irrelevant. So what is the point of the change if it isn't about pulling land and assets more directly into council control? You can't have it both ways. Nothing to see here, no big change, but we want it done now because of our current climate. I can only assume the current climate means the concern about the infrastructure projects for water and erosion are going to be paid for, which means this investigation is exactly what is needed. Elected members making gestures and comments about getting their hands on Cromwell money hasn't helped this, and again speaks of inappropriate behaviour from elected members sitting around this table. The board will need to clarify understandings of the different buckets and asset types that sit within the Cromwell ward and across the district. The board requires clarification on the anticipated changes to the management and rating of the proposed changes to delegations. Even though today's paper tells us that we're confused about the links to districtisation, the Cromwell Community Board asserts that ultimately the conversation about changes to delegations will lead to further districtisation of functions within and the assets that go with them, that currently sit in each of the Central Otago district wards and are controlled by community boards. The board contends that the conversation should be about the effects of districtisation first, and the impacts on rates and levels of service, and that delegations will become apparent as part of that conversation. I agree with exactly what Wally said, and I think he said it so succinctly and so well. If you rip the heart out of your community boards now, the conversation about districtisation that might happen in a year's time or later this year will be of no relevance to them because the delegations won't exist anymore anyway. There's a precedent for this thinking through previous water responsibilities now being controlled by district, including waste, roading and footpaths, drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, those lovely waters that change names at the moment, and our libraries. The board maintains that removing or amending delegations as currently proposed will ultimately require a conversation about districtisation. You flagged that already. And that this proposal is approaching the conversation the wrong way round. Understand the impact of districtisation on rates and levels of service for each ward should come first. Changing delegations without this understanding will lead to unintended consequences across the district that have impacts for all wards, not just Cromwell. There's a need for wider conversations about these significant changes across the district. The CCB acknowledges that there needs to be moves to distribute funds, to distribute wealth, to look at how we do that and how we support the infrastructure needs of the district. But then that still points us back to the talk about districtisation coming first. We believe an appropriate starting point would be undertaking consultation to help with understanding how delegations will be reviewed for the benefit of the district. This will start the conversation about the impact of district funding and management of assets like halls, pools, cemeteries, reserves and museums. So in conclusion, as we've already stated, the Cromwell Community Board disagrees entirely with the proposal to change its delegations as detailed in today's report to you and in the report that came as agenda item 24.1.3 presented to the board at its meeting on the 23rd of January this year.
Thank you. Questions for Anna, Tamer?
Same questions for Wally. Thank you for coming in. I've read through the Cromwell submission quite a few times. I really want to understand why you think that the delegations conversation and the districtisation conversation cannot be separated.
I think that you've got them the wrong way round. That's what I think. The reason I think you've got them the wrong way round is because when you start talking about what needs to be districtised, delegations fall quite naturally out of that. So the first things that come about districtisation and delegations will fall from which things need to be districtised in order to make the functions of them more reasonable across the district. So for instance, our pool in Cromwell probably costs our ratepayers an awful lot of money at the moment. That's one of the conversations where Cromwell would win in the conversation about districtisation, because if the costs of the pool here is spread across the district, we win on that one. I think
I totally agree with that. So I'm sorry, but that's not the conversation we're having today.
But I think you've got the conversation the wrong way around. The process is also a really major issue here. We've proposed that districtisation is the conversation we should be having first before we have the conversation about delegations. That's our proposal. We aren't saying they're the same thing. We're saying that should come before this, because otherwise you've already got yourself in a situation where you've got community boards that might have had the heart taken out of them.
Do you believe, when looking at that, if you separate the districtisation and the fact that these delegations are a living document that can be amended at any time by council,
Once you've done
do
it,
you
it won't
think,
come back.
but where it says 5.6, to undertake any other responsibilities that are delegated to it by the territorial authority. Do you not think that this conversation could come prior to districtisation, because then any other responsibilities can still be delegated under these new delegations?
I believe that if this decision is made today, we lose the opportunity for those conversations in any real way. If you make the decision today that those delegations will change, clawing back of delegations for any of our community boards would be much harder than a conversation about which delegations will naturally fall from the districtisation conversation.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillor? Thank you, Anna. Really appreciate your input and the time you're taking to come here today.
Thank you.
And the work that was done previous to this as well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we have Mark Jessup, who's the Deputy Chair of the Teviot Valley Community Board, that is taking the lead for the board on this matter. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm speaking for the Teviot Valley Community Board, who I've presented a paper, it's sent it out to everybody, I believe you have. I'll just go through that quickly. One of the first things that's been said to me by various people in the community is a simple question: what will this do for our rates? And I don't have an answer to them. I think that is a big issue for most people that live in the Teviot Valley, is what's going to happen to their rates if this happens. And you'd have to say that I don't think anybody around this table can answer that question. Also, on the face of it, our diminished responsibility, the potential diminished responsibility, to me seems like the start of a slippery slope on thin ice to complete dismantling of community boards. With only one councillor, I've got great concern about our ability to have our needs met or heard. Additionally, the upcoming districtisation review could result in a whole lot of stuff being taken away from the ward. Then we see even more lessening of the need for community boards. The decision-making requirement will also disappear completely to become solely street names and small grants. Even so, it's noted that our current grant budget is a total of $5,000 for the year, which is a lot of work to do to give out $5,000 or $3 per rating unit. We've looked at the Cromwell submission, and whilst we don't agree with its entirety, we do echo a lot of the questions that they've made, and we would like to see the answer to those questions before we can form a final position on where we're at with this. What we're trying to figure out, for example, is in the future, how will we bid for works and priority within the Teviot Valley? Well, I don't understand from this current proposal as to how we would bid for roadworks or whatever. Also of concern, if we agree to this proposed reduction of our delegated authority, is the further possible impact due to the impending representation review. So that could further reduce the community board's structure, power, raison d'etre. Another concern of mine, which is allied to this, is currently when a community board has a position and pass a motion relating to a local issue, the councillor that sits on our community board does not have to vote for the views of the community board. And this isn't a I mean, I current councillor, Sally does a great job. What I'm saying is the rules are she can make her own vote, and she's not bound to vote the way the community wants. It's the same. There's 8 councillors around here, and when you 8 community board members around this council table, and when you listen to an issue around the community board, surely you've got the community board in mind. And then when you come to the council, you put a different hat on and you look at the bigger picture as you're supposed to. How can you have 2 views on the same thing? I think it puts you in a very difficult conflict of interest. However, we're pleased to see the suggestion that as part of this proposal, if it goes ahead, the community boards will in future be able to present to the full council 4 times a year. And we see that's a great thing. It allows us to put forward feelings from the heart of the valley and give you an idea of what's going on down there. We'd like some more specifics on that, and I've made some suggestions here. First of all, it'll be 4 presentations a year on any items the board may choose, or combination of items. about to 15-minute presentation time. That's 1 hour a year for the board, for the council to hear from the board. Ability, we'd like to see the ability at those meetings for us to bring within the 15 minutes some sort of expert witness who can also speak on our behalf if necessary. And also the ability from that meeting to create a future agenda item relating to Teviot Valley specifically. Time moves on, and I've been recently lobbied by various people saying that 20 and 30 years ago, 40 years ago, things were done like this and this is why we did them and it should carry on. However, circumstances changed in the meantime. So in that respect, yeah, maybe it is time for a change because circumstances have changed. However, in saying that, we shouldn't be guilty now of creating a delegations environment to suit today's circumstances when we know that there's a great potential in the near future, in a few months' time, due to districtisation and representation reviews, that things will change again. So what I'm saying is, should we change delegations now, or should we wait until we know what the landscape is there? Overall, I do believe the council does need overarching power to take the district where it needs to go and satisfy its needs. This could mean, one other solution is that the community boards have a limit to their authority to a dollar ceiling of something, say $100 per rating unit, which would be about 4% of the rating bill. So if the community boards could make decisions, but it was limited in how much they could make, that might be something that's of assistance in the future. In summary, we don't currently have enough information on the impact and effects of the diminished delegations proposal to be able to advise our full response. If you can give some clarity on the above matters, and particularly the ones that Cromwell have raised, we'd be better placed to comment on the proposal. The districtisation and representation reviews will impact the needs of information and decisions required from the Teviot Valley Community Board. It may be that those two reviews should be completed to give some clarity of the landscape before a sensible decision can be made on what delegated authority is consequently needed and appropriate for all the community boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, Tana?
I've just got one, and that is I wondered if the aspect around preparing an annual submission to come to council from the community board on things like the long-term plan or the annual plan, if that would then potentially eliminate your concerns around the councillor from that community board not necessarily voting in a way that was consistent with the community board's views. Because we would then have the submission from the community board as a whole, as opposed to there being 1 or 3 voices around the table.
Well, maybe, but I'm not talking on an issue by issue basis. You know, if there's an issue that comes up and the board votes on it, and then the council does the council, and it doesn't have to vote the same way as the board wants. And even if it creates an 11 to 1 a vote where our issue might get lost, or in the case of Cromwell or Vincent, they're 7-4. Still think that should be the way it is, but and the views of the board then heard.
Can I ask in relation to that, Mark, if a councillor is told this is what the board believes is the right course of action and the council is bound to that, how do you balance that against the situation that we cannot come into this room with a predetermined view? Because the view of that council will plainly be predetermined by what the board's told.
Well, because they are the voice of the community board. Otherwise, the community board does not have a voice.
Would not the chair of the community board be the voice of the community board as opposed to the councillor?
Well, if the chair doesn't sit around and speak on the issue, that further muzzles the views of the community board.
I still go back to the question though. We cannot, under good practice or probably even at law, come into here saying this is how I will vote. So if the community board has said this is how you will vote, that person would automatically be predetermined.
Yeah, and I know that might be different to what you do at the moment, but I think that the community board should be able to have a vote around the table.
Okay.
Chris, it's interesting that the discussion between Teviot and Minnetonka, and never more relevant will be today how significant those small communities are having a say. Effectively, the slopes are the same. But we function exceptionally well in the Miniataro when we have issues that we feel it comes through our board, and we have meetings of staff all the time, and that comes out, all recorded, that comes out strong. But at this table, we have to be district-wide. We have to make decisions for the benefit of Central Otago District, the region, admittedly knowing that our corner might want some bridges, might want some stuff, but that may not be in the context of the region. And it worries me that it's perceived that we don't understand that when we actually do. And that's politics at the end of the day. Politics is politics. And if you want strong representation, we've got it with Sally, we've had it with Stephen Jeffrey, we had some fantastic rural-based, very good elected members. And there's tougher on them than anyone else. But I don't feel we never not have our say and are not fair to everyone in the district. And I think that's really the concern. That's just politics.
Any questions, councillors?
Well, yes, no.
Right, Mark, thank you. Appreciate you for coming up today. It's been great to see you, and thank you for your work done getting up to us. All right, we will now come to the report itself. Mr. CEO.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, thank you, Your Worship. And look, it's great that we are having this discussion, because I think it is timely. Because clearly this council hasn't had this discussion for 30 plus years. And so I certainly welcome the comments from members of the community and the fact that they've brought to this, because ultimately councillors here will have to make their own minds up. With all due respect to what we've heard, this is about the delegations discussion. Now, form follows function. Do we have the functions council right? And do we have the function of community boards right? That's the question you have to answer. And then what flows from that will be consequences and subsequent work. With the passage of the previous paper, in there, you did see that, you know, we will be having a districtisation conversation with our community in take it to the community body in August of this year. And that's where those other questions will be asked. How do we treat swimming pools? How do we treat land assets? It is a misnomer about endowment land. That's quite clear. The law is pretty clear on the use of endowment land. It can only be for the benefit of that particular community. So I would say that's a little bit of a red herring. But then how do we treat other land? Because you know, we've got a lot of land projects across the country. If you look at our last annual report, I think it was somewhere in the order of $140 million on current values is what we have in landholdings. What that could be in the future, I'm not sure, but this council, these community boards have been very prudent with the use of their assets. And I wouldn't think any changes to delegations would see a rush away from what has been the normal practice of this council, to be very prudent and essentially hang on to it. But anyway, how this discussion goes is really for you now. You have information. Okay, I wouldn't want to conflate the two. I know it has been conflated, but this is about what is the function of council? What is the function of community boards? Do we have it right? Is it fit for purpose? What was agreed to back in 1989? Noting that those MBEs have all expired. The legal framework that guides council's actions is the Local Government Act 2005. That's what we have to abide by. This resolution is talking about when you take an oath and take an oath to the district and you make these decisions. So with all that in mind, look, I would invite you to debate on it. So I'm not sure if my colleague has any comments to make. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. We've got a team here who can ask any questions you have. But the question before you right now is, do we have the function of those two, council and our community board, right? If it is, so be it. If it isn't, what could they look like? With regards to consultation, we're pretty confident in our legal position, which is we do need to consult with the community boards. We've had a conversation with the community boards. The community boards have come back to us with a series of points and questions, and they've given us the feedback, all four. Whether they like the response or whatever, they have provided us with information which you now all have. So you can use that to make your own minds up when you come to discuss this. But we are confident in our legal position on this particular issue. And look at that, and I'll shut up and I'll leave it to you to have that debate. But I don't know if my colleague has any.
No,
Nothing to add, Wayne?
no, it's
All right, councillors, here's how we're going to progress from here. There's an opportunity to ask Wayne or Peter questions. Once we've exhausted all our questions, that doesn't mean there might not be more questions later. Once we've exhausted all the questions, we will go around the room to get a sense of what people are thinking, what their concerns are. I think it's really important. that we all hear from each other, hear points that may need to be raised, that may influence our decisions one way or the other, and so forth. So there will be a very clear opportunity to make statements, but at the moment, we're asking questions of Peter or Wayne. Tony.
Mr. CEO, I just wondered, do you have a potential timeframe for that districtisation conversation to be going to our communities?
Yeah, we do. In the paper referred to, we think we've put something to them in August of this year. So which means we would have to frame that up with councillors, you know, in the latter part of this current financial year. So what does it look like in May, June? Because the questions of that district is what do ward rates look like? Because changing delegations doesn't change the nature of our rating system right now. What changes the nature of our rating system is once you've had a districtisation discussion, how does that play out? If we were to districtise swimming pools, then like roading, it would be a district-wide rate as opposed to a ward-based rate. So nothing changes in ratings from today's discussion, but the districtisation one is, yeah, we'll be having discussions with councillors in the latter part of this current financial year with a view to putting something in front of our community in August, with the purpose being once the community come back to us, you go through the normal submissions and hearings process, then the outcome of that could then inform the next LTP, which has to be started to be drafted at the latter part of this year and published 30th of June, adopted 30th of June 2025.
So just to be crystal clear, there are no implications for people's rates bills in relation to this delegations conversation?
None whatsoever at this point in time, and until you, first of all, until you adopt an annual plan for this, you know, for the next financial year, given the agreement we just made in the previous paper. So no, not at this point in time.
Tracy.
Mr. CEO, from an
Please, you can call me.
Feels weird.
From an purely operational point of view, can you explain in potentially a little bit more detail what a change in delegations would mean from an operational point of view?
Well, I think there was a salient example that was made by His Worship the Mayor when he spoke to the community boards about when we districtised airports and the question of the changes to the Cromwell and that it wasn't discussed with the Cromwell community board. And that was a faux pas. Well, clearly, anything that has interest of the community board needs to go to the community board. And that was the point where airports are districtised and a decision was made. There should be a passage of information for this, shouldn't there? It should go to the community boards first of all. They can have a chance to debate it, discuss it, and bring forward to council their recommendation of how council should think about this particular matter. And then that's put before council, and then you have a chance to discuss that. So I think we all have to feel our way through this. But there will be things that are genuinely, absolutely relevant to people. And so we would bring that to that community. But then there may be other things that may be of interest. And so, you know, we would, in combination with the chair and others, have a think about, gee, is this the information you want to see? So I think we'll feel our way. There was a comment that we would look to review the delegations in 12 months' time. And that's certainly something that we would do. And actually, when you come into the triennium anyway, you do have to review delegations. So there will be an opportunity to adjust them at that point as well. But you know, it's certainly, if it's relevant to the community board, I would expect that papers would be brought to the community board before they come to council.
So just following on from that, potentially the community boards may be encouraged or asked to engage more on wider matters than what they are now, or?
Yeah, definitely. And also there is the advocacy role within the community board. So, I mean, whatever decision you make today, the role of community boards and their purpose does not change. It's enshrined in law and local government. But there is an advocacy where community boards can advocate on behalf of their community and bring to the attention of council any matter that they feel is relevant.
Thank you.
So, Peter, just from Mark's presentation, he noted 4 points. One was 4 presentations per year on any items the board may choose. I think that pretty much we've agreed on. The 15-minute presentation time available was the second point that he made. So I'm just wanting to talk through these to.
If I may, this is my idea, and I've never had a time limit on it.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think a time limit is appropriate if the board wants to do it. You know, we'll work our way through that. We might find that, as you see in our agendas, there's always a number next to how long. That's the estimate. We'll find out.
We're not gonna tell them they've got one.
Absolutely, no.
And then the ability to bring in expert witnesses, I'm not exactly sure what the meanings by that, yeah. And then also the ability at that meeting to create an agenda item to be included and voted on at the subsequent month's council meeting.
Well, that would be possible. I mean, we're always looking at the agendas sometime in advance. I think there was a particular point. Councillors can bring notice of motion to council 5 days in advance of council meeting. So there's always that potential to get things on the agenda.
We got a question from Neil.
Oh, thank you. I was writing my next one actually. So Peter, what or where is the intention of the LGA that taking delegations back to council will be in line with? And that you actually note in the report in paragraph 2 that whether some of the delegations should be brought back to the council and in line with the intention of the Local Government Act. What is that intention? I can't see that in the report anywhere. I'd like to have that explained, please.
Wait one. Perhaps we go to the next question and dig that passage out.
Okay.
Wayne's just looking it up.
But just getting the notification in front of us. Sorry. Can you repeat the question, please, Neil?
Okay, in the second last paragraph of section 2, it says that staff have been investigating whether delegations to community boards are still fit for purpose or whether some of the delegations should be brought back to council and in line with the intention of the Local Government Act. I'm saying, where is that intention of the Local Government Act that says that should happen? It's not in the report.
Yeah, but I guess that's when we've discussed this with the various community boards. That's about making sure that when councillors come to the council table, they take a district-wide view when they make their decisions. Because that's when we use the term intent, that's pretty much what is referred to in that case. That it's in line with the intent of the Local Government Act, which is for all councillors, when you make a decision, you just have to have a district-wide view when you make that decision.
So is there some suggestion that hasn't been the case to date?
Well, I think when you look at the delegations as they currently are written, you will see in there with some of the terminology that's used that effectively there is one paragraph, I think paragraph 16, that refers to the council cannot overturn a decision of the community board, which effectively means that things that come up from the community board can only be ratified by council. So there's an anomaly with that statement that we would need to address. And that's when we talk about making sure that our councillors, when they make their decisions, that they are aligned with the Local Government Act.
But isn't it fair to say that council does have the ultimate control over that by when the community boards make their submissions for their annual plan, long-term plan budgets, that the council does have the ability to control that there. So while that particular wording might suggest that it can't, in actual fact, council can.
Yeah, I think there's an anomaly there that we would need to at least potentially make an amendment.
Yeah, an anomaly that probably could be fixed without changing all the other delegations, I would suggest.
Well, you're absolutely free to suggest anything. Just answering the questions.
Oh, what I'd ask you is that do you think that could be fixed by making that change without changing all the other delegations? They don't follow on.
I think it runs a little bit deeper than that. Hence why you're having this debate, and where it lands, it lands.
Further questions, councillors? Sarah. I'll come back to you, Neil. Sarah's.
Yes, all right. There's a second one sitting there, there'll be a third one coming.
I'll talk about them.
You know, you take some.
All the good stuff we're being offered, all that sounds great. The interaction with listening, the opportunity to present. That's missing at the moment to a degree, I think. And that sounds great, but it feels like an exchange for drop this will give you that. Are they interlinked to that level, or is that something that we can look at on its own, and we get, regardless of what we choose to do with the delegations, those are moves that are positive
and do bring our community boards more into this forum and more relevant. But are they linked that if we don't do this, we can't have that?
Well, we're over to me. Look, you raise a really good point. If we should be doing it regardless of listening, we should be doing it. So, we can have a chat about that next meeting. But I think, that's an absolutely valid point. Neil, number 2.
So just make sure I clearly heard this correctly, that there's no expectation that change in the delegations as proposed will have any financial implications for ratepayers.
Well, at this current point in time, the rates were struck in the last financial year for this year. So until council makes a decision to strike the rates and adopt the annual plan for 24-25, there is no financial impact.
Would it be fair to assume that there could well be?
Saskia's going to come in here, Neil.
Hi Neil, so we're doing all the modelling on the annual plan based on the current ward and district structure. So that is what we will propose to bring to the 20th March meeting. Any changes to the way rates are spread across the district, as Peter said, would need a formal resolution from council and would be consulted with the community, and that would not happen in this financial year or for this annual plan.
Thank you.
I think it's time for number 3 now.
Okay, I haven't written them out yet, so this one will be off the cuff. It's the question about effective consultation, and the report talks about consultation once, and then it goes into about conversations, and there's been much debate all around the world, and then even in the New Zealand courts, about what is meaning a consultation. And I guess I look at the simple definition from the Oxford Dictionary as a conference in which the parties consult and deliberate, a meeting for deliberation or discussion. And I think, do you think that you can honestly say, we can honestly say that the consultation that we've had with our community boards has been effective? Has there been an opportunity for the boards to have a response given to what they've said, or as I see it here, it's just come straight to council? So I'm asking the question whether you think that means that the consultation has been effective. Wouldn't it have been better to go back to the council, to the boards, with their responses that they provided in the case of Cromwell and Teviot?
I guess, and perhaps my colleagues might have some comments on that, but first of all, and it was raised by a number of the speakers today, so, and that's a valid point. Sometimes councils can be told that they're too laborious in their decision-making processes, and then other times they're told that they're too fast. The fact is, we did go to the community boards, and the community boards have had an opportunity to come back to us with comments, and they have, either in written form or verbally. And those matters have been tabled. Where we thought it may have shaped some of the writing on the paper, and you will recall when we started having this conversation, that was really only going to be one option put up to the council for consideration. But as a result of what we heard and what people were saying quite clearly, there needed to be at least 2 more options for councils to consider. So I think we have listened in that sense. Consultation, 13 working days. With the RMA reform that's going to be announced next week, we'll have 5 working days to respond to that, and that's consultation from the government's perspective. So relative to that, we'll have twice as much time. So it's a moot point. I know you disagree, but we are confident in our position on this, that we have had this discussion with community boards. The community boards have come back to us with their thoughts, and where we can, we've amended the paper to reflect some of those thoughts, and you now have a chance to debate that amongst yourselves.
But don't you think for effective consultation, it would have been appropriate to go back to the boards first with the responses, so the boards actually got the consultation loop was complete?
Well, that's, I'll leave that for the councillors to debate. We're confident in our position on this one. And I think in fairness, the community boards are well aware of what our intentions have been in regards to this. In terms of our feedback to you, it might not have formally been tabled at a community board, but I think there's been pretty much consistent dialogue on this particular subject.
Cheryl.
This is carrying on from what Neil has raised, and I'm kept myself in not asking Mark a question, but do you then feel that perhaps the Teviot Community Board could have given more than 1 day, 1 working day? Could they have perhaps looked into this in a more detailed way and come up with I'm not saying better, that sounds terrible, but a more inclusive sort of submission or statement? I mean, you said 13 days, 13 working days for the Cromwell Community Board, with 1 working day for the Teviot. I don't consider that fair on the Teviot board.
You know, and that's valid point. We were meant to go to the Teviot board to discuss this in January, but the chair at the time requested that we postpone that meeting and push it back into another date. Hence, the delay in putting this to the Teviot board. But actually, as Mark said today, and what we heard from the Teviot board when we had the meeting, their response has been pretty consistent and pretty fulsome. So whether they had 1 day, 13 days, 2 years, I think what we've heard from them is a pretty reasoned statement from them that, you know, I don't think it was, I think they thought about it and come up with a position that they've now presented to us. So I think we could say that we've actually heard from them and heard their views quite well.
Any other questions, councillors?
I've been fighting for this the whole time I've been in local body politics.
That's not a question, Stephen.
But I mean, the question is, why?
You ever think about it while we
Yeah, it's not been a statement, I guess, for the Minnetonka board, from not being, it's just, why are people so frightened of taking a district view? Is a question.
That's almost a rhetorical question, so.
You know, because that's.
We can't answer that. Right. We're moving into statements.
Well, I'll take a question. I'll give you a question about what probably Stu was trying to reflect on. What is it that council can't actually do under the current delegations, apart from the issue we talked about, that anomaly that Peter raised, and I accept there's an anomaly that I think that's easily fixed. What else is it that council can't otherwise do?
Well, right now, the delegations bind council, and the implicit belief in the practice over time, effectively. You know, we said in the arguments that are presented, don't we stop the asset grab, we're stealing our assets. I mean, it's not the case, obviously. You know, the council owns those assets. Central Otago District Council owns all land, buildings and that sort of stuff. So, but the implied, and now I guess by practice, is there is quite a disconnect. And do we have the form right of council, and do we have the form right, or the function of council and the function of the community board? And the fact is, you haven't tested that for 35 years. Now, you'll make an answer today, and that's absolutely fine. We will take your decision and implement it. But right now, is the function right in council, and is the function right in the community boards? There's some questions around the alignment with the Local Government Act, and there's questions about tail wagging the dog. And I'll leave those for you to debate, but it's just saying 35 years, we haven't tested this, we're testing it now. You tell us.
Alrighty, I want to hear what people are thinking.
I've still got some more questions, Your Worship.
Yeah, hang on, Neil. I've got Lindley, then I'll come back to you.
I just thinking at the end of the day, as a councillor for the region, I've got responsibility for the finances of the council. I've got to take part in responsibility for that. How can I actually do that if we've got several community boards making financial decisions that I haven't been part of? At the end of the day, I'm responsible for the council on that, the region.
And I think that's a valid concern. hence having this discussion.
Neil,
Peter, you've said that the delegations for the boards haven't been reviewed in 35 years, but is that true? So my question for you to answer that will be as saying, how have we amended delegations in the past?
Well, you'll know from your experience, I think it was you that told me that we hadn't looked at this particular range set. Every triennium, obviously, council adopts the register of delegations, because by law you have to, the mayor has to determine the committees make up terms of reference, so on and so on, and the delegations that are given to community boards, given to myself as chief executive. And we'll tweak those from time to time, and you tweak them probably towards the end of last year. But I guess the question in your time around the council table, there would be, have councils had the discussion about the delegations to the community boards in your time? Because as it's been relayed to me, it hasn't been. Hence the conversation today.
Yeah, I guess the issue to consider is that they actually have been, but not in that way that we're doing at this time. Because every time that we've looked at digitalising different things, and I go back and go Three Waters, solid waste, libraries, there's one missing that I can't remember, it doesn't matter. You know, that's been done by a discussion around digitalisation first, which then that form then followed the function of then the delegations are reviewed. So I think to say they haven't been touched for 35 years says in the way that they're being done this time, no. But all the changes to date have been done as a result of where the particular cost centre or function is going to be controlled from. So they have actually been reviewed. That would be fair to say, wouldn't it?
No, I think what's fair to say is that you have reviewed the digitisation of council assets, but just because you've brought roading into a district-wide viewpoint, you know, I suspect the delegations of the register of delegations to the community boards did not change.
Oh, well, I'll take the example of Three Waters and say they most certainly did, because in that Powder Act was the Powder Act for Three Waters. So I think that's the difference, is that the delegations have changed as a result of the conversations around digitalisation. So there has been change over 35 years, but not in the way that's being proposed to be done this time.
That's right. And I'll jump on that word you've said, propose. It's for councillors to debate this and determine where it goes from here. We're just putting it on the table to say, I think we need an in-depth discussion about this, hence today. Now's the chance.
alrighty. Neil, any further questions? Any other councillors, any further questions? I want to get, sorry, Sarah.
Recommendation A, see the report and accept the level of significance. How certain are we that we have that level of significance right from what we've heard and what we've talked? Obviously, accepting that in the first place, I don't know how comfortable I am that we do have that level of significance covered off and we're not opening ourselves up to something if we can't accept point A, obviously.
We're confident in that statement, that the legal standing of that. With regards to all decisions of council, can be judicially reviewed regardless. You know, every member of the public has that right. But with regards to that particular statement, when we look at our own register of delegations and what it says that we must implement, we need to consult with the community boards when you recommend changing the community board delegations. We're doing that, we've done that. So from a staff perspective, we're confident in that position of that statement. Good question.
Right, we exhausted the questions. I want to hear what everyone's thinking, and I'll start with my Deputy Mayor, Neil.
Thank you, Tim. I think the first thing to make the observation is that this is about the delegations, and this has got nothing to do with land whatsoever. And it's unfortunate that that's the bit that has come out so much through this process, to the extent that we've heard quite a bit about 1989 memorandums of understandings, 1984 administration and finance agreements, and all those sort of things that may or may not have given the Cromwell Borough, then the District Council, some assets or not, when they clearly didn't. They were quite unrelated. So leaving that to one side, I do think that the key thing to look at here is to keep the separation between distributisation and delegations, but to look at this from the point of view of saying, has the council adequately and had effective consultation with the community boards? And I've had the benefit of being on the community board since 1998. I chaired the Cromwell Community Board from 2001 through to 2019. So I think I got one of the better understandings around about how the council has considered recommendations from community boards, and in particular the Cromwell one. And to sit at that table, as I have done at the council table since 2001, with that district-wide focus in my deliberations. And I'll call to task anybody that would suggest that we as a council, or and me particularly, have never done that before. It's hard because you are in a situation sometimes when the board wants something that you know that in the bigger picture wise it doesn't need to go. But I have sat with a council that has considered those issues before and has said, well, in the absence of any other calls on the money or whatever, or the actions by the respective boards, the council supports what the board has asked for the council to be done. But if we take that back and go, well, the key thing here is the consultation with the community board about making a change. And in my questions to Peter before, I was trying to understand whether he thought that we had the Royal We had done a good job of that. And as Peter said, that's for us to decide. So my view is that I don't believe we have. I think we have let our community boards down. And you heard two very strong submissions today suggesting that. You know, the consultation process is not that something says, I come to you, told you this, you told me that, and now I'm going away. It doesn't finish that quick. I think we've done a disservice to our community boards. There's nothing that I can see in the current delegations that the council doesn't have control over. So I rephrase that. There is a couple of things. Peter's pointed out a couple of anomalies. They're minor details and they're easy fixed, and I don't think anybody in the community would have any problems with us making those changes to reflect that. It's really simple to do. Well, however, what's been proposed is to actually take away any power to act pretty much for the community board. What I read out of the proposed scope that the board will have is effectively you'll have to find a way to get stuff to the agenda itself, because it won't be getting stuff referred back to it all. So it'll have to try and find a way to get reports written to go to recommendations to council. But pretty much what will become is from community boards that have extensive delegations to do the best things for their very strong communities of interest that were well recognised and are still recognised today as being some of the strongest in the country. That'll be diluted. And it'll be diluted to such an extent that actually you'll go along to a community board meeting and there won't be a lot to do. There are community boards already in this country that have that situation. And the irony is they're paid probably twice as much as what our community board members are, if not much more than that, but they do sod all. And that's just an absolute and utter waste of people's time and also a disservice to the community, in my view. We need to really think long and hard about why we're doing this and what the benefits are going to be. Trying to get the emotion out of it is always going to be tough because the strong communities of interest that we have. But I think what we have, as a council, have seen from two community boards in particular is a pretty strong position that they've taken about things. If we want to have effective local government in Central Otago, as we've had for as long as it's been around, since the changes in '89, then this is not something that we should be doing this way. The best thing we can do today, I think, from what I've heard to date, and I still need to hear what other people say because I haven't been canvassing other members. I've been trying to just take everything in. To date, I think that this is not a conversation that we should be taking any further, and I think we need to think very carefully about whether the cart is before the horse, and that the conversation should start with looking at the big picture. And if it's about money, therefore it's about distributisation. So today I'm really interested in what others say to see if there's another option there to take forward.
Thank you, Neil. And we'll go around the room. I'll start with you, Tanya.
Thank you. I wanted to thank those who attended this morning and gave their views and sent emails and made phone calls, and some of them had a similar opinion to what we heard this morning, but some actually had an opposing view. And I think it's important to acknowledge those people because they have taken the time to contact us, and some of the reasons that they haven't appeared here today or appeared in Facebook comments is for safety fears, which I think is a bit sad. I have gone back and forth and around and reread submissions. The VCB considered this on the same day as the Cromwell Community Board and actually unanimously supported the changes to the delegations. Since the changes came out from the Community Board, I've gone back to the VCB members to see if they still felt the same and whether or not they wanted to make a submission on behalf of the VCB. One of our members has done some additional canvassing with other community boards and things, and he's actually provided a submission to us that you've all received in your email. The other Vincent Community Board members were confident in the decision that we made on the day that that was the right decision for our community. I think I really want to be clear that we are not talking about districtisation. We are not talking about grabbing another ward's assets or selling their land or making somebody else pay for something that's not within their ward. That's not the conversation that we're having today. That conversation will be coming, and I understand that Cromwell thinks the Cromwell Community Board have a view that that's the conversation that should be coming first, but I agree with the CE that actually all follows function, and we need to establish what the function is of community boards first. And when I read through on pages 62 and 63, what the community board delegations would be, and the objectives remain the same. And then I see things in there like advocacy, engagement, relationships, community leadership. And I think there's actually a lot of really exciting things in there that we could be driving for our communities with less sitting back and waiting for something to land in our laps. And we've got some really amazing people driving things in our communities, like Roxburgh with Sally and a number of others just got on and did something. The Omako Hub that's surging ahead. And I know Neil talked about a strong and effective governance structure here, but I also look at how many people voted in our last election. And it was really poor. I think that there is a really important conversation coming around districtisation. But I also think it's really important that we hear from everybody who wants to be involved in that conversation. And I just want to make it crystal clear that this decision that we're taking today is not about land or money. It's about these delegations. And I think Lindley actually hit the nail on the head when she said, as a district councillor sitting here at this table, can I, hand on heart, say I'm making the right financial decision for our region if there are financial implications of a decision that I wasn't a part of and I'm being required to ratify under the current delegation? But I'm really interested to hear what other people might say.
Thanks, Taylor. I'm just conscious that we've been at this for a couple of hours. I'm also conscious I'm a man of a particular age. I'd quite like a short break, and I think I might not be alone in that. We've still got a long way to go, and I don't want to have to be rushing things. So we're just going to adjourn for 10 minutes, make it quick. And I think it's appropriate that it's not a whole lot of chatting while we're doing it.
Brilliant.
How are you? Okay. Is you okay down there, Sarah? Have you got?
Gone back to the 90s.
Yeah, back on analog, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Yeah, she died. She died of old
All right, we'll get back to where we were. Thank you. That was much appreciated, I think, by not just myself. Sally.
Thank you. So I guess I do share a concern as well that Lindley brought up, that council does have the power for the overall budgetary control and total operations of council. And when decisions are being made in isolation within community boards, it's not always easy for us to have that oversight, particularly big projects. And so I totally agree that, you know, that we do need to have that oversight in some of those projects. And also I see that at the moment, the way it works is we do have 4 community boards making isolated decisions. And when we sit at this council table, we are looking at a district view. If I look back to my terms on community boards, in the Teviot Valley, I think one of the biggest things that we came together on in my first term was actually the floods that we had in the Teviot, and it really highlighted to me how important our community board was for our community and how we helped our community get through that natural disaster. And I think there's a real ability for community boards to strengthen their knowledge on emergency procedures. And I think that's, you know, that's a role that community boards can really play for our districts, is around the emergency management. And I think that also would give our boards some real, you know, could give our board some real structure. So I see that there's an opportunity. I think people are always scared of change, but I think that sometimes we need to look at things as a big picture. And I think Peter's come into our organisation and he's seen things here that work differently to they do in other councils. And so he has brought this discussion to us today, which is not an easy discussion, but he's given us the opportunity for us to speak on it. And I think it's important that we have, you know, had to address this today. So, yeah, my take is that I think, you know, I agree with Lindley that we do oversight the control of the council budget, and that's something that we do need to consider, and we need to consider our district as a district wide.
Thanks, Alan. Nigel.
Thank you, Tim. To Peter's point, I have no problem whatsoever in reviewing what we do as a council. Now, it's probably timely that delegations and districtisation on the radar. I can't comment on Anna's comments about the behaviour of elected members, but apart from that, I fully support the comments that Anna has made today in her presentation, and fully support the letter sent by the Cromwell Community Board making the points around making consultation, time frame, submissions, the lack of supporting information, the lack of notice of community concerns, and the timing of the consideration of districtisation and of delegations, of which comes first. So I think that Anna and the Cromwell Community Board and its letter have succinctly and well put the situation. And from my point of view, I would be supporting on this report options, either that we receive the report and do nothing else, or I would support option 2 to revisit this decision against the background of the long-term plan or the annual plan. I do feel that this process has been rushed, and yeah, I hesitate to say it, but I think it's been poorly handled. It's a matter of high significance, and that has been under emphasised. And I think we need to pause and look at more thoroughly at there. And a lot of the comments around the table today and the questions being asked only go to support, for me, the fact that people don't have sufficient information to make informed decisions. So at the moment, I'd be looking at either receiving the report and nothing else, or supporting option 2.
Thank you, Nigel. Cheryl?
Unlike obviously a lot of people around this table, I do believe that land is interlinked with the delegations. So to that, I am going to read what my thoughts are.
Yeah.
There's hardly been a meeting that I've attended where our mayor has not brought up Cromwell's assets and reminded us that boards aren't allowed to own or dispose of land. When local government was reorganised in the late 1980s, a social contract was made with the people of Cromwell. There were assurances given to the Cromwell community that they would keep control of their land and assets, or VUC land and assets, and to date, this has been happening successfully. Those assets were built up by generations of Cromwell residents and ratepayers. At any stage over the last 35 years, council could have rejected a recommendation from the board. So ultimately, council has and has always had the final say. So I ask myself why. If things have been working smoothly for the last 35 years, why would you want to change it now? Well, given the financial challenges facing the district, it's understandable that council is now looking for new ways to fund rising costs and for improved infrastructure and community needs. But by adopting the proposed changes to the delegations, Cromwell residents will most certainly suffer disproportionately. The lack of information and the speed in which this delegation's issue is being rushed through has led to widespread mistrust in our Cromwell board. I personally still have unanswered questions and don't believe that anyone around this council table today are in a position to truly make an informed decision. For example, what will the future now be of the Cromwell Memorial Hall project? The revitalisation of the Cromwell retail area, Gear Estate development, Cromwell sporting and recreational facilities, which we seriously are lacking once this motion is passed. It would seem many of these projects, these future projects, are now under serious threat. Given the magnitude of the change proposed, this item should be left on the table awaiting further information, including the status of endowment land, reserve land, fee simple land, and the Cromwell land. I cannot believe that this motion does not meet the significance policy of this council. It is proposed that Cromwell community loses effective control of its assets, a control it has exercised since 1989. How can this not be significant? Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Martin.
I liked how Robin Dicey reminded us of what happened to Vincent Pike in 1877. I was wondering if he's been making measurements of his worship.
Thanks, man.
I have difficulty separating out the delegations changes and the potential for districtisation.
I've heard speakers today and I've read reports and listened to and various emails, and I do believe we've got the cart before the horse. I think changes are necessary to the current delegations, but I believe that those changes will be informed by what comes out of the districtisation policy. So I don't think we can ignore that. Council's always had the opportunity to veto any decisions made by community boards. We have traditionally been, as a council, been quite proud of the delegations we have given to our community boards, and various mayors going back in my term have actually lauded it. It's a point of difference that we were all proud of. I am lacking information about where the existing boards will go to, whether they exist. So there's the representation review, which is also coming up on our radar later this year, all comes into this mix. And I'm just concerned that we're being the decisions we're going to be made around delegations are not taking into the factors the potential for districtisation and the potential effects of the representation review. So my decision is sitting now until unless I'm convinced otherwise, is that I've got to lean towards accepting the report and leaving it on the table, or leaning more towards option number 2.
Thank you, Martin. Sarah.
Quite a bit of how I think has been said. Neil, Nigel, Cheryl, Martin. The biggest thing for me is sitting here when I decided to put my hand up for this job. Part of that was I felt there's a large portion of our community that are quite disenfranchised with local government. People that were not necessarily disinterested, but too trying to find out what's going on. And I feel like this that's played out in the last few weeks is a pivotal point in us taking our community with us on this journey, or completely disenfranchising our voters. And people come out in that last election that haven't voted for a while because they thought this was an opportunity to be listened to, and that they would get somebody in there who was going to speak for them at the table. And I think the way this has been brought through at the speed it has, and with a lack of clarity on some of the information, and there are a lot of questions that a lot of people have, including myself, that I don't fully understand this enough to be confident to make this decision today, in all honesty. And I know a lot of people feel the same. And just that lack of certainty worries me. And if we are going to make a decision today, knowing the people that are here today, but also many people that aren't on both sides of the table, have more to say, I think this is a pivotal moment in taking those people with us, or completely disenfranchising those voters. And given the low turnout at the last election, is that where we want to go with this, or do we want to take our communities with us on this and prove that we are listening? Because I don't feel like we are, to be perfectly honest, if we move forward with this. Totally agree with should be review the delegations. We totally agree that that's an appropriate conversation to have. I feel like we're being offered some good stuff, which is awesome, and I'm fully on board with all of those things that have come up on what our community boards could get. But I feel like it's tit for tat. We'll take this away, but you can have this. I'd like one without the other, actually. I don't feel that we need to strip the delegations to do that and give the boards the power that we are seemingly offering, and how much power or involvement that is. Ultimately, I'm in the same position as Martin. I think receiving the report and going no further at this stage, I would be most comfortable with. At the very most, option 2, to leave it to the annual plan. And I think that would be to speak to the public and say, we are looking at this more, whether that changes or not, at least we have the chance to do that. And the last thing I would like to do is to make this decision today and open ourselves up for a review, that we have neither the time, the capacity or the money to do. So if there is any doubt, to pause would be the only way to move forward today.
Thank you, Sarah. Ian?
I understand the benefits of council having greater oversight in terms of the district review and increased information for councillors. I'm concerned about what we'll lose by community boards no longer having this oversight. And if we'll lose some of the uniquenesses and points of difference between our communities. I'd like to receive the report and do nothing else, or support option 2.
Thank you. Lynn.
I've got to be true to myself, and I'm thinking of all the things that I've heard today for and against. And I know both on community board and council that I've talked to from now to protect the assets of like communities, especially probably the Pittsburgh community in the past, but things have changed and it's tough times out there, and ultimately we have to think about what's fair on the ratepayers of the region as a whole. And I'm still thinking about, you know, at the end of the day, I've sworn to take responsibility for the region, and I can't feel like I'm in control if these decisions being made in isolation by the community board.
Thank you, Emily. Jason?
Is it possible to ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it ties in from what Neil said. I've got something I'd like to say, but the question first. Neil said that we could make a change, and specifically referring to point 16 in the changes, what is a current, but the proposed change, that council cannot override a community board decision made pursuant to a delegation. So what I'm asking is, can you fix, because that's what I heard Neil write, and he could correct me, I'm presuming he's still listening, that
that's what I said.
Council, that we can, you believe that we can correct that, and that council, at the moment, as it's worded, council cannot override a community board decision. And you're saying we can. How do you propose we do that?
If that question's to me, then what my conversation with the chief executive was that we could change that so we couldn't. Is what I said, but there's a conversation I had with Peter saying that we could change that and that would fix that issue. Didn't require all the rest to follow, was what the conversation I had with Peter about was, or the question I had put to Peter.
I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I'll just counsel with, and I will refer to my colleague. But as it is right now, community boards are delegated by exception. You have to change the delegation. You can't just change that statement because you've delegated them the authority to do that. And so what you actually have to change is what we're proposing that. If it's not right, change the delegation, then that statement is correct, because it's the same of any council committee. If it has delegated authority, councils can't override that delegated authority, because that's the way our delegations registered. So you have to change the delegations, would be all I could say.
Okay, thank you.
And the chief executive and I will disagree about that, because I'm sure there's a way to get around so you don't actually do what Peter's suggesting you'd otherwise be doing. I take his point, but I'm sure there's a way to make it happen that the council may have some reason that overrides or trumps the power to act given, but that's detail that will come later on.
I might just add to that, that as a lawyer, I'll be really reluctant to be making this up as we go. But anyway, Tracy, back to you.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that there is a significant fear that something, whatever that is going to be lost. And that's human nature. From when we're really little to when we're well old, we fear that when we fear that we're going to lose something, we react. And that's what I'm seeing today and hearing. I'm also hearing from other members of the community, not only from Vincent or outside, I'm also hearing from Cromwell that people have opposing views to what we've heard today. And I respect all views. So thank you to everyone who has come today. I believe that the districtisation, discussion, and I stress it will address those fears. I believe that implicitly. Very importantly, the whole community is going to have the chance to have that discussion, and I believe it will generate a huge amount of interest. And I think that's really important to have, and I think it's really important to have that wide, broad view coming out from everywhere. We're a really small community as far as the New Zealand context is concerned, and I believe that our strength is in the collective, and that the delegations, as they are currently worded, do not allow our council to speak and act that way.
Okay, thank you. Stu. First thing I wrote down here is community and whole of district. We're going into a growth period unseen in this region, probably since our forefathers came here with a pick and shovel and gold. If we believe our long-term plans, our 30-year plans, whether it be airports, whether it be gold mining, whether it be development in the time Tim Cadogan's been mayor, there's 5,000 new houses or something built. And if we want to be in control of our destiny as a council, it's elected every 3 or 4 years, we've got to make decisions on our 20 and 30-year plans and how that's going to look. In the whole time, and I think it's a 4th term at council, and I've been nearly 20 years on the community board, have never been disadvantaged in the community board where we haven't had delegation. We've got only a small bit of land which helped our hospital. We're as strong as voice as we can muster in the Mini-Toto on every front. So I don't think by taking delegation away, we will lose all the community boards. They may be stronger because they have to be strong. But I totally agree with Lindley. We cannot make decisions on a district-wide, whether it be tourism, whether it be water, whether it be roading. Roading and water are districtised, so we have gone down that path and it's worked fine. I go back to the late Barry Becker. Massive battles with some of the same people presented today to get districtisation of water. But when the World Curling Champs are in Naseby, the water there should be the same as it is in Cromwell, because we're a global destination now that's growing, the most trusted in New Zealand, one of the most trusted. Talked about tourism guys at the last presentation done. The real risk if we don't do this is you've got massive amounts of development coming across this region. And if that pressure falls on community boards and they're not big, there's a massive amount of public pressure and public money that's going to be decided on by a very small group of people that may not have stood for a community board for the growth potential and the districtisation and the delegated authority. They may have stood there to look after a small little part of the community. So I think if you take a long-term approach, a long-term view, as our forefathers did, and I've got family members, ties to Cromwell like everywhere else. It's not about Mini-Toto, Cheviot and Cromwell. It's about look at what happens if you take the growth we've had now in our 30-year plan and the growth we're going to have. We need to be in total control of that at a council level. And we need community boards feeding in. And I think the discussion about time, I mean, I take my hat off to Peter to bring some of the big ticket issues to the council table at the start. Because I have been aiming for this since the whole time I've been on community board and council, that it wasn't right. And to be fair, there'll be people around this table who have said, yes, you have, and been shot down every time. And I'd say, and I have, effectively, I've brought it up every time. But big ups to Peter, we employed Peter. So we aren't one of those councils that drags our feet. That aren't one of those councils that never gets anything done. So we've got a new brush and we've got some big decisions to make, and this table will make them. And I'm in support. We get on with it and get it done, because if we don't, we kick it down 3 months down the road. It's a bit like the old girlfriend who was going to kick you out anyway. She waited for 3 months down the road to get the same result. At the end of the day, I don't think the result will change, and time won't make it any softer. And we have to work as community boards and council together, because we haven't got a chance to get it wrong. And on that part, like Lily said, we've got to know and got to help. In a lot of ways, and I brought it up before as a statement and it shouldn't have been in the wrong place, for our Mini-Toto to grow and prosper, we need to thrive in Cromwell. We need to thrive in Central Otago. Because the services we can't have there, we can drive across the boundary in 45, 50 minutes and we'll have everything. So you'll never find bigger supporters for Cromwell's than the Teviots and the Manitotas, because we need the big people to help, and the Vincents. So, you know, I'm all for get on with it. It's going to be a tough pill to bite, and for some of the community boards, I do feel sorry for the consultation. It isn't long enough, possibly, but I don't think it's going to change the outcome. And for you guys have to go back to your ratepayer base. If we do make the decision, whichever way it is tough. But politics is tough, and the next 2 or 3 years of this table is going to be tough. So I support 100% that we change delegation, and because I think we have to.
All right, thank you, Stu. And look, I really want to thank all councillors and staff and the input that we've had from members of the public before I say what I'm thinking. I think this has been, so far, it's not over yet, has been an exceptional debate. And it's been done in an exceptional manner, and it's credit to the whole of Central Otago, the way that this has come to the table and been handled at the table. So on behalf of everyone in Central Otago, thank you to all involved. So here's what I'm thinking. I've been listening to everybody around the table really closely. And this is really evenly poised. And if I was to call for a vote now, which I'm not right now going to, it would be an extremely close vote. It would be potentially coming down to me to make a casting vote. Maybe, you know, maybe 7-5, maybe 6-6, don't know. Since I've been there, I've had the privilege and pleasure of spending quite a bit of time with iwi. I mean, iwi work much more on consensus, because you get a better result when you talk it through, and you talk it through, and you talk it through. And I read Mark Solomon's autobiography. That did touch on that as well. And I think we have a lot to learn from that. And we could sit here the rest of the day talking this through to get closer to consensus, because no matter which way this vote falls, it's going to be close. And I think this is too important for it to be that close. It is too important for can we say, a Western view that, nah, I've got the numbers, I'm going to go with it. I'm not saying that in a personal, but I'm just saying that's how often we look at things around our board tables. Just what this is. My sense at the moment is that I've heard a lot of concerns from board members, from councillors about a lack of consultation, about haste and so forth, and I take that on board. I also take on board, and I think Lindley, as many have mentioned, no, we're not in charge entirely of our own destiny. Are we a federation of 4 wards, or are we a district council? Yeah, that's a very good question, that one. My gut tells me this. This is a big one. We should not be progressing it when it's going to be this close. And I suspect at 1 o'clock, I'm quite happy to keep us sitting here till 3 o'clock, but I don't think we're going to get a lot closer. And the reason I don't think we're going to get a lot closer is we don't actually have to do this. It can go through the districtisation discussion, which will come. That districtisation discussion will have the numbers and the clarity as to the land, because really, I want to make a very plain point here. This is not about the land today. And some of the nonsense that I've read about the value of the land and so forth, it's just wrong. But it's wrong in a vacuum that we haven't gone out and said, here's exactly what we're talking about. I think Sarah's made a really good point that, you know, our voting percentage for the first time ever was under 50%. We can bring people on the journey and say, hey, if this is the right way to go forward for the district, then come with us. Today, I think if we have a 7-5 vote, going, no, we're going to push it through. I don't know if that's what the numbers are. But really, if there was 1 or 2 people on one side and everyone else on the other, I'd be pretty comfortable with carrying on. I'm not comfortable with that. And so that's probably where I'm putting myself, is that we need a clear majority. We need a consensus, and consensus doesn't mean 100%, but it means everybody's kind of in the same direction. We're not, but we've got a chance to be. That's the beauty of where we're at today. And so that's why I'm leaning towards, I certainly don't think this lies on the table. Sorry, I don't think this just goes away. I think it does need to lie on the table. Until option 2 there needs to be changed a bit. Revisit this decision against the backdrop of the annual plan, because we've decided we're not going to have a long-term plan, or a special consultative process, because that's So it'll be a special consultation process. I wouldn't want it to do that either. By August. No. As part of that, well, but we're going to be consumed with the consultation, then we've got some districts, so that's, yeah, and we've got there's a legal and workflow issue for this. So we can make this to on the table. I guess until then, kind of benefits out, but after the disorganisation discussion, this report, I think it's in my.
Do we have a bucket?
That's all I'm voting on.
But we can vote, we have lunch.
Well, you would do.
That's all I'm voting on right now.
That's all you come to council for. Morning tea and lunch.
Yeah, don't.
Just discussions with the CEO, we may not have the resource to revisit this as a special consultation. We can't before the annual plan, so I'll take that out. If we have a special consultative process on distributisation, that may give us the answer. It may not, but we'll decide that then.
Yep.
Because we are going to have a distributisation discussion. And that will be a special consultative process. And then we'll have to revisit it. And if this is still, if this hasn't resolved it or clarified it or made it easier, if this paper doesn't come back and we can then make a better decision. So not a better decision, a more clear, more joined decision. But anyway, that's where I'm sitting, and I'm open to further discussion.
When's that time frame?
Peter, we would be looking at a special consultative process on distributisation.
In
August.
There's a couple of things we have to work through. The annual plan process is under the pump, so our ability to take matters to community boards for the annual plan under the such that the time progression we have to meet now is probably challenged. But the distributisation discussion, yeah, we were forecasting that and that sort of take it to the community in the August.
Can I just add, there's quite a lot of modelling that needs to do with the distributisation conversation.
Yeah.
That's why, as Peter says, it can come after.
Okay. So this won't be part of this will not be part of the distributisation discussion, but the distributisation discussion can inform us. Whether it does or not, we'll find out after, but it won't be part of that.
Yep.
Because we're Tracy, then Neil, then Nigel.
I think that was just answered that you've actually got your team capacity to do it for August.
We'll have to tease that out, but we would definitely plan on the distributisation for August because we would be free of the annual plan and the representation review. And so that would enable a gap in the calendar.
If it's September, it's not.
Yeah.
Neil.
Thank you. I think if we're in the path of looking at taking the path of not proceeding with the review that's been proposed, then to try and do anything as part of the annual plan would just be fraught and too complex and not enough time. There's no way. You know, Peter's right. His staff are already under the pump because we have been mucked around with by externalities involving Three Waters and other things that have made a hard job so much harder already. You know, we bought ourselves a year, have we? But it's still a hell of a lot of work to do. So I don't even think that's even achievable, and we shouldn't even be thinking about it all. If we are going to go down the path of anything to do with other conversations around distributisation, then I think we do that when there is space to do it, when there is no pressure, when there is plenty of time to as you say, Tim, with what you talked about, to try and answer all of those questions, to get some cohesion, some wider thinking, and then get to a decision that is one that is supported by the majority as opposed to what could be, as you said, a very small minority here today. So I think that we think about leaving it on the table and going no further. You know, there's been enough said and heard about what needs to happen next that there'll be a chance for, after the other things are done, for the team to sit down and work that through what it might look like. But I wouldn't tie Peter and his team's hands or our hands any more than we need to.
That's fine on the table. September. Nigel, and then Martin.
I think what Neil said, that I was going to say that we leave it on the table.
Thank you. Martin? Just pause for a moment while these guys work out some words.
Have we got some words? It doesn't involve leaving it at the table.
Okay.
Because that's just hasn't. However, this kind of does the same, I hope. If that's something that you'd like to have a think about.
I think that's perfect. We're not putting a time frame on it. We're not making delegations part of the districtisation discussion because we don't have the capacity, but we will come back to it once we've done.
Can you put in the chat, please, Wayne? I can't see it.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
And just throwing it out there, would you add districtisation and the representation review?
No, it's a separate sort of process. We're in training that anyway.
Yeah.
We've got no choice.
But
Can I say, when I look at that, we are deferring further discussion. There is nothing about a decision being made.
Well,
further discussion will involve a decision. I mean, it's going to do.
There was going to be a decision today, but that's not happened. So what I would like to know is that when we go down that path, there will be a decision made regarding delegations and after however we want to put it, after delegations have been done.
So if we're clear on the words agreed to defer further discussion, does mean this would come back. This paper will come back to us.
And a decision has to be made.
Oh, absolutely. But
that could be a year from now.
Yeah, I mean, look, the outcome of the digitalisation discussion and the register of delegations discussion, and in fairness, we do need to land those whilst we're doing the LTP that needs to be adopted by end of June 2025. So, I mean, there is that, because, so it is going to have to be part of that workflow.
so if we put C,
If we don't have a time frame on that, we're gonna walk around the side of this all the time because it's too hard. And that decision is another case of us kicking the can down the road because the decision is too tough for us to make around the table.
no, I agree. So we put in C,
By May.
well, we can't do it by May because the delegations discussion that we want to have some information to come from. Plus we'll be doing what is it? Nah, the other one. Representation review. Thank you. You can start starting some sugar. This agrees that these discussions will be concluded by November.
Oh, you start in August. And now we're November.
You do August for the consultation, you allow a bit of room for September, no, October.
October.
Okay, you think that's doable?
If we don't consultation in August under the special consultation procedure, it is a clear month for our community.
Yep.
That we need, and then we also need time to analyse the data and write the report. So October potentially, depending on when we get it August, would be a wee bit tight.
So look, why don't we're simply worried that we need to make a decision. We can say this year, agree that these discussions will be concluded this year. One more time. Really?
Is there a danger, and there's probably not, that there'll be a lot of decisions made by community boards and is it the short time frame they've got to reflect?
If we've been doing this wrong for 30 years, what's another 6 months?
Do we need to remove the word?
We're doing it right for the last 35 years.
It's a level of significance. Everything around this table is one.
Well, I defer to governance. It would be an amendment. Yeah, I think it's an amendment now. I think it saves having a debate about whether the level of significance is right, because that's going to be kind of pointless when you look at B and C. And this is a problem removing that. Look, I take on board what Sarah has said, and I think there is a long debate there as to the level of significance that we don't need to have, so why not just take that out?
We've just taken one of the toughest decisions we might have to make, and we've been out for pretty much 7 or 8 months to probably come to exactly the same.
That may be the case, Stu, but I tell you what, you can have an opportunity to
But
voice
would
that.
that actually be better? If everybody's gonna be, have the same information and everybody will be more likely to be on board, given the time to get the answers to
And if
get.
we're not, do we roll it out for another 7 months?
No, we don't.
But that's up to us actually to get the answers.
Wasn't that decision there today for that?
Well,
Mr.
that's,
Cummins.
we haven't voted it, Stu, and that's what, I mean, if that's the view that the majority take, then we come back and we're circling again.
The biggest criticism of council is that we're too slow. So
Okay.
here we are.
All right. I'm going to move A, B and C as they're on the board. You can see those, Neil?
I can only see A and B, and I put a note saying, are we sure we're not tying our hands by put in the bit about the special consultative procedure on districtisation. It doesn't tie our hands too much. But I think I heard
Well,
that probably not with when I see what C says.
I just sent it to you now.
Yep, got it. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That'll take care of it.
you want to second that motion?
Absolutely.
All right, any further discussion, councillors? I think we'll do a show of hands on this one. All those in favour, raise your hand. And Neil, is your hand raised?
Yes.
Having you seconded it?
Yes.
And all those against? And would you like that recorded?
Yeah.
Yes, all right, then that motion is passed. Councillors, I again and staff want to thank you for your efforts on that. I think that was a long process, but I think it was a valuable process. And I think we should have lunch.
Yes.
We will be,
Don't forget.
and don't forget, we now have our own salt and pepper. Not with the state development. We will come back at 10 minutes to 2.
It's two.
Hey Wayne, is that a separate meeting?
Talk about more.